At 3 in the morning, I stood barefoot on freezing Chicago snow, watching flames devour my apartment. When I called my father, he simply told me to handle it myself. I thought that was rock bottom. But the true horror began 48 hours later. The fire investigator showed me the remains of my stepmother's housewarming gift, and I realized they had not just abandoned me, they had tried to erase me for a $500,000 insurance check. My name is Monica Hargrave. And until 3 in the morning on this freezing February night, I believed that if you worked hard enough, the world would eventually pay you back in fairness. I was 28 years old. I was a landscape architect with a rising reputation, and I was the proud owner of a third-floor condo in a redeveloped brick building that smelled of fresh paint and old money. I had bought it exactly 6 months ago, scraping together every cent I had earned, borrowing against my future to secure a present that felt safe. I thought the ink on the deed was a shield. I thought the heavy oak door was a barrier against the chaos of my childhood. I was wrong. The explosion did not sound like a noise. It felt like a physical blow, a massive, invisible hand slamming against the walls of my reality. I did not wake up. I was punched out of sleep. 1 second I was dreaming of willow trees and water features, and the next, the air was gone. It had been replaced by a thick, choking solid mass that tasted of burnt plastic and sulfur. My eyes snapped open, but there was nothing to see. The darkness was absolute, but it wasn't the darkness of night. It was the heavy, suffocating black of smoke. My chest seized. I tried to inhale, but my lungs rejected the air, forcing me into a violent coughing fit that doubled me over in my sheets. Instinct took over where logic failed. Fire. I rolled out of bed, hitting the floor hard. The heat was already rising, a tangible weight pressing down from the ceiling. It was not just warm, it was an aggressive, living thing that was eating the oxygen in the room. I could hear it now, a roar coming from the living room, like a jet engine idling in my hallway. "Lucky!" I screamed, but the name came out as a raspy croak. My cat, my only roommate, my only family that actually acted like family. I scrambled on my hands and knees, the carpet rough against my skin. The smoke was slightly thinner down here, a layer of gray beneath the black. I swept my hands under the bed, my fingers hooking into dust bunnies and shoes until I felt soft fur. Lucky was pressed into the furthest corner, his body vibrating with terror. I didn't have time to be gentle. I grabbed him by the scruff, dragging him out as he yowled, and shoved him against my chest. I needed to move. I needed to get out. I crawled toward the bedroom door, my phone glowing on the nightstand like a beacon. I snatched it. That was it. That was all I took. My laptop, my jewelry, the photos of my mother before she passed. Everything else stayed behind. When I reached the bedroom door, I hesitated. I remembered the fire safety drills from grade school. Check the heat. I reached up and touched the wood. It was warm, terrifyingly warm, but not burning. I used the hem of my t-shirt to turn the knob and threw the door open. A wall of orange light greeted me. The living room was an inferno. The heat singed my eyebrows instantly. The expensive velvet sofa I had saved up for 3 months to buy was gone, replaced by a skeleton of burning wood. The curtains were ribbons of fire, but the center of it, the heart of the beast, seemed to be the new electric heater standing innocuously in the center of the room. It was spitting sparks like a fountain of malice. I dropped to my stomach, clutching Lucky so tight he dug his claws into my shoulder. But I didn't feel the pain. I army crawled through the hallway. The air was screaming. The sprinklers finally kicked in, but they didn't help. They just turned the soot into a black, oily rain that plastered my hair to my skull and made the floor slick. Every inch was a battle. My knees bled. My lungs burned as if I had swallowed acid. I reached the front door, fumbled with the deadbolt with slick, trembling fingers, and threw my body weight against it. The cool air of the corridor hit me like a blessing. I scrambled out, kicking the door shut behind me to starve the fire, and ran. I ran down the 3 flights of stairs, barefoot, skipping steps, my heart hammering a rhythm that drowned out the sirens wailing in the distance. When I burst out of the building and onto the snowy sidewalk, the cold was a physical shock. It was 10 degrees below zero in Chicago, and I was wearing nothing but a thin cotton oversized t-shirt and shorts. The snow bit into my bare feet instantly, turning them numb within seconds. I stumbled across the street, putting distance between myself and the building. I turned around just in time to see the windows of my apartment blow out. Glass shattered and rained down onto the parked cars below, glittering like diamonds in the streetlights before shattering on the pavement. Flames licked up the side of the brick facade. My home, my sanctuary. Then, the realization hit me harder than the cold. It wasn't just furniture. It wasn't just clothes. On my desk, right next to that window that had just exploded, was my external hard drive. And next to it lay the physical portfolio case containing the original hand-drawn renderings for the Horizon Greenscapes project. I gasped, sinking to my knees in the slush. Horizon Greenscapes. It was the biggest contract of my career. It was a massive urban park redevelopment that was going to put my name on the map. I had spent 4 months working 18-hour days on those designs. The deadlines were tight. The backups were on the drive. The originals were in the case. "No," I whispered, the word lost in the wind. No, no, no. It was all gone. Every line I had drawn, every calculation, every shade of green I had meticulously selected. It was ash now. I was scheduled to present it to the board of directors in 2 days. Without that portfolio, I didn't just lose a project. I lost my credibility. I lost my shot at tenure. I lost the future I was building to prove that I didn't need anyone. The sirens grew deafening. Fire trucks screeched to a halt. Massive red beasts blocking the view. Men in heavy gear jumped out, shouting orders, unspooling hoses. The strobe lights painted the snow in violent flashes of red and white. A crowd had gathered. Neighbors in bathrobes. People from the bars down the street. Late-night drivers stopping to gawk. They held up their phones, recording the spectacle. I saw the flashes of cameras. To them, this was content. This was something to post on social media. Look at the fire. Look at the tragedy. I clutched Lucky to my chest. He was shivering violently now. Or maybe that was me. I stood there, surrounded by dozens of people. Yet I had never felt more isolated in my entire life. I was a ghost in their midst. They looked at the fire. Nobody looked at me. I was the girl with soot on her face and blood on her knees, shaking uncontrollably in the snow, watching her life burn, and I was invisible. The terror of the future crashed into me. I had no wallet, no credit cards, no ID, no shoes, no coat. My insurance papers were in the fire. My laptop was in the fire. I didn't even know if my car keys were in my pocket. I checked. No, they were on the kitchen counter. I was stranded in the middle of Chicago at 3 a.m. with absolutely nothing but a cat and a phone with 12% battery. My fingers were stiff, clumsy blocks of ice as I unlocked the screen. I scrolled through my contacts. Friends? Sure, I had friends. But at this hour? To ask for a place to stay? To explain this mess? My thumb hovered over Dad. Franklin Hargrave. We hadn't spoken in months. Not since Christmas when his wife, Elena, had made a snide comment about my quaint little job, and I had left early. But he was my father. He was the only blood I had left in this world. Surely, in a moment like this, when the universe had stripped me bare, the petty grievances of the past would dissolve. Surely, a father's instinct to protect his child would override the Cold War we had been fighting for a decade. I pressed call. The ringback tone sounded impossibly loud in my ear. 1 ring, 2 rings, 3 rings. "Pick up," I pleaded, my teeth chattering so hard I bit my tongue. "Please, Dad, pick up." 4 rings. "Hello?" The voice was groggy, thick with sleep, and edged with irritation. "Dad?" I choked out. "Dad, it's Monica." "Monica?" I heard the rustle of expensive sheets. "Do you have any idea what time it is? It is 3:15 in the morning. Dad, listen to me." I was sobbing now, the adrenaline wearing off and leaving behind pure raw panic. There was a fire. My apartment, it's gone. Dad, it's all gone. I'm standing outside. I don't have shoes. I don't have anything. There was a silence on the other end. I expected a gasp. I expected him to say, "Stay there. I'm coming." I expected him to ask if I was hurt. Instead, I heard a sigh, a heavy, annoyed exhale through the nose. "A fire," he repeated, his voice flat. "I told you that building looked cheap. I told you that wiring in those old renovations is suspect." "Dad, please," I cried, watching a firefighter smash my bedroom window with an axe. "I have nowhere to go. Can I come home? Just for a night or two? Until I figure this out? I'm freezing." I waited for the salvation. "Monica," he said, and his tone shifted. It became the voice he used in boardrooms when he was firing someone. Cold. Detached. Final. "You are 28 years old. You insisted on buying that place against my advice. This is a result of your own lack of caution." "What?" I couldn't process the words. "This is not our problem," he said, enunciating every syllable. "We have a gala tomorrow night. Elena needs her rest. Do not disturb her sleep with your drama." "Dad, I'm barefoot in the snow," I screamed into the phone, not caring who heard me. "Then call the Red Cross, or the police. Handle it. Monica, grow up." Click. The silence that followed was louder than the explosion. I lowered the phone slowly. The screen went black. He had hung up. My knees finally gave out. I didn't fall. I simply crumpled. I sat right there on the frozen, slushy sidewalk. The cold seeped through my thin shorts, biting into my skin, but I barely felt it. The cold inside me was far worse. It wasn't the fire that broke me. It wasn't the loss of the Horizon Greenscapes portfolio or the $500,000 mortgage that was now attached to a pile of ash. It was the realization that I was an orphan. I had a father. He was alive. He was rich. He was 30 minutes away in a heated mansion, and he had chosen to leave me in the snow. I sat there, rocking back and forth, hugging Lucky, tears freezing on my cheeks. I felt like a child again, the little girl who used to wait by the window for him to come home, only to be told he was too busy. "Honey?" A voice broke through the haze of my misery. I looked up. An older woman was standing over me. She was wearing a thick, quilted-down coat and clutching a poodle. I recognized her vaguely. Mrs. Henderson. She lived in the building across the street. We had shared an elevator once or twice, exchanged polite nods about the weather. She didn't ask questions. She didn't film me with her phone. She took off her own coat, a heavy wool trench coat, and draped it over my shoulders. It was warm. It smelled of lavender and safety. "You're turning blue, sweetheart," she said softly. "Come on. My lobby is warm. The doorman has hot coffee. You can't stay out here." She reached out a hand. Her skin was wrinkled and spotted with age, but her grip was strong. I looked at her hand, then at the burning building. Strangers. A stranger was clothing me while my own father slept. "Thank you," I whispered, my voice breaking. I struggled to my feet, wrapping Mrs. Henderson's coat tight around myself and Lucky. She guided me toward the building across the street, her arm around my waist to steady me. As we reached the glass doors of her lobby, a movement caught my eye. Down at the end of the block, just past the barricade of fire trucks, a car was idling. It was a black Tesla Model S, sleek, silent, dark-tinted windows. It looked exactly like the one my father drove, the one he had bought last month to replace his Mercedes. My heart skipped a beat. Had he come? Had he regretted the call? I squinted through the smoke and the falling snow. The car sat there for a second, the brake lights glowing an ominous red in the darkness. Then, as if satisfied with what it had seen, it pulled away. It didn't speed off. It glided away smoothly, disappearing into the shadows of the Chicago night. I shook my head violently. "No, you're hallucinating. Monica, you're in shock." He was in bed. He had just told me not to disturb his sleep, He wouldn't drive all the way out here just to watch my apartment burn and then leave. That was insane. That was paranoia. "Come inside, dear," Mrs. Henderson urged gently, opening the door. I stepped into the warmth of the lobby, leaving the cold night behind, but as the glass door hissed shut, I couldn't shake the image of those red taillights fading into the dark. I didn't know it yet, but the fire wasn't an accident. The fire was the opening move, and the person in that car wasn't just a spectator, he was the architect of my ruin. The interrogation room at the fire department headquarters smelled of stale coffee and aggressive floor cleaner. It was a small, windowless box, painted a shade of gray that seemed designed to drain the hope out of anyone sitting inside it. I had been waiting for 45 minutes, staring at the scratches on the metal table, my hands still trembling slightly despite the warmth of the room. I was not under arrest. Technically, they had called it a voluntary interview regarding the structural integrity and origin of the blaze. But when a uniformed officer escorts you to a room with a two-way mirror, you know you are not just a witness, you are a suspect. The door opened with a heavy metallic clack. The man who walked in looked like he had been carved out of granite and left out in the rain for a few decades. He was wearing a rumpled suit that had clearly seen better days, and his tie was loosened at the collar. He carried a thick manila folder under one arm and a styrofoam cup in the other. He didn't smile. He didn't introduce himself immediately. He just pulled out the metal chair opposite me, the legs scraping against the linoleum, and sat down. "Ms. Hargrave," he said. His voice was like gravel in a mixer, low, rough, and utterly devoid of patience. "I am Inspector Silas Vance, arson and explosives." I nodded, swallowing hard. My throat still felt raw from the smoke. "Am I in trouble, Inspector?" Vance didn't answer. He took a slow sip of his coffee, his eyes scanning my face with a terrifying intensity. They were pale blue, sharp, and cynical. These were eyes that had seen people burn down their own businesses for payout money. Eyes that had seen children play with matches. Eyes that had seen everything and believed nothing. He was known in the city as the Bloodhound. I had read about him in the papers years ago when he cracked the Midtown warehouse arson ring. He did not miss. "That depends entirely on what you tell me in the next 10 minutes, Vance said. He opened the folder and spread 5 photographs across the table in a precise, deliberate line. I flinched. They were high-resolution images of my apartment, or rather, what was left of it, the charred skeleton of my sofa, the melted remains of my television, the black hole where my window used to be. "We have determined the point of origin," Vance said, tapping the third photograph with a thick finger. "Center of the living room, a concentrated burn pattern. Temperatures in that specific spot exceeded 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit before spreading. Do you know what was sitting there, Ms. Hargrave?" I leaned in, squinting at the blackened debris in the photo. It was a twisted lump of metal and plastic, barely recognizable, but the shape was distinctive, a tall, slender tower. "That is my space heater," I whispered. "A Vornado localized heating unit," Vance corrected. "Top of the line, ceramic element, tip-over protection, automatic shutoff. Very safe, very expensive." He looked up at me. "Did you purchase this unit?" "No," I said. A sudden chill running down my spine that had nothing to do with the temperature. "It was a gift." Vance's eyebrows twitched. "A gift? From whom?" "My stepmother," I said. The words tasted like ash in my mouth. "Elena. She came over 3 days ago, Tuesday. It was the first time she had visited me in 3 years. I closed my eyes, the memory playing out in my mind with sickening clarity. Elena, standing in my hallway in her cashmere coat, holding the box with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "It is going to be a brutal winter." "Monica," she had said, "your father and I worry about you in this drafty building. Please, take it. Consider it a peace offering." She had insisted on taking it out of the box herself. She had plugged it in. She had set it to the highest setting to test it out. "A peace offering," Vance repeated, his tone flat. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, clear plastic evidence bag. Inside was a tiny, fused piece of copper wire. He placed it on top of the photo of the heater. "Do you know what this is, Ms. Hargrave?" I shook my head. "This is a bypass bridge," Vance said, leaning forward. The air in the room seemed to get heavier. "Every modern heater has a thermal cutoff switch. If the unit gets too hot, it cuts the power, prevents fires. It is a simple, fail-safe mechanism." He pointed to the bag. "Someone opened up that heater, stripped the safety switch, and soldered this wire in its place. Then they tampered with the thermostat sensor." I stared at him, my breath catching in my throat. "It meant the heater would not stop heating," Vance continued, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "It would keep pulling current, keep getting hotter, until the plastic casing melted and the internal components ignited. It was not a heater, Ms. Hargrave. It was an incendiary device with a 48 to 72-hour delay, a time bomb sitting on your rug." The room spun. "She gave it to me," I stammered, my hands gripping the edge of the table. "She insisted I keep it running. She said the apartment felt damp." "Elena Hargrave gave you a device rigged to incinerate your home," Vance said. "And you are lucky you are not lying in the morgue right now. If you had been a deeper sleeper, or if the smoke alarm had been 30 seconds slower, we would be having this conversation via autopsy report." I put my head in my hands. The tears came then, hot and stinging. It wasn't just fear. It was the crushing weight of the betrayal. It was the realization that the coldness in my father's voice on the phone wasn't just indifference. It was expectation. "They knew," I sobbed. "When I called him, he knew." Vance sat back, the aggression draining from his posture. "Tell me about the call." I looked up, wiping my face with my sleeve. I told him everything. I told him about standing in the snow at 3 a.m. I told him about begging my father for help. I told him the exact words Franklin had used. "Not our problem. Do not disturb Elena's sleep." He sounded annoyed, I said, my voice shaking, but not surprised. He didn't ask if I was hurt. He didn't ask how bad it was. He just wanted to get off the phone. Vance watched me for a long time. The cynicism in his eyes softened, replaced by something that looked like pity, or perhaps recognition. He sighed and rubbed his temples. "You are not the suspect, Monica," he said quietly. "I had to be sure. I had to see your reaction when I showed you the bypass." He stood up and walked to the corner of the room, turning off the recording device on the wall. Then he came back and sat down, his demeanor shifting. He was no longer the interrogator. He was a co-conspirator. "I have been tracking your father's business dealings for 6 months, Vance said. "Not for arson, but for code violations. But in the process, I found something else. Vanguard Structures is a sinking ship. They are leveraged to the hilt. They owe the banks $8 million, and they have 3 major lawsuits pending for structural negligence. Your father is broke, Monica. He is robbing Peter to pay Paul, and Paul is coming to collect with a baseball bat." "Broke?" I repeated. "That's impossible. They just bought a new Tesla. They throw parties every weekend." "Appearance is everything to men like Franklin," Vance said, "but the money is gone, and desperate men do desperate things." He opened the back of the file folder and pulled out a document I hadn't seen in 20 years. It was yellowed at the edges. "Do you recognize this?" I looked at the signature at the bottom. It was my handwriting, looped and childish. I was 8 years old when I signed it. "It looks like I don't know. Dad used to make me sign papers all the time. He said it was for savings bonds for college." "It is a whole life insurance policy," Vance said. "Taken out on you when you were 7. Your father is the sole beneficiary. But here's the kicker." He flipped to the 3rd page, highlighting a paragraph in neon orange. "There is a rider attached, an indemnity clause, if the death is accidental, specifically caused by natural disaster or structural fire. The payout triples." I felt the blood drain from my face. "How much?" $2 million, Vance said, "plus the $500,000 from your apartment insurance, which he would also claim as your next of kin since you have no will. $2.5 million, That was the price tag on my life. That was why Elena brought the heater. That was why she checked the smoke detectors were working, probably to disable the one in the bedroom while leaving the hallway one active so it looked legitimate. They didn't just want the apartment to burn, they wanted me to be trapped inside. They tried to kill me, I said. The realization didn't make me scream. It made me go cold. A deep, freezing calm settled over me, displacing the panic. My father and my stepmother tried to burn me alive for insurance money. Yes, Vance said. And right now, they think they failed. They are likely panicking. They know you survived, which means they know the insurance money for your death is off the table. But they will still try to claim the property insurance on the apartment, and they will be terrified that you might figure out the heater was the cause. So arrest them, I said, slamming my hand on the table. You have the heater. You have the wire. I have a heater that burned up, Vance countered. I can prove it was tampered with, yes, but I cannot prove who tampered with it. Elena will say she bought it at a store, and it must have been a manufacturing defect, or she will say you must have tried to fix it yourself, without a confession, or hard evidence linking her to the modification. A good lawyer will tear this apart in court. We need more. What do we do? I asked. I wasn't asking as a victim anymore. I was asking as a partner. Vance leaned in, a grim smile playing on his lips. We play a game, a psychological game, right now. They are wondering how much you know. If you go to them angry, accusing them, they will wall up. They will lawyer up and destroy any evidence they have left. So I have to pretend? You have to do more than pretend, Vance said. You have to be the daughter they think you are. Weak, dependent, stupid. He took a napkin and a pen, sketching out a rough diagram. You are going to call Elena, Vance instructed. You are going to cry. You are going to tell her that the fire investigators are grilling you. You are going to tell her that you are terrified because you think you caused the fire. Maybe you left a candle burning. Maybe you overloaded a socket. You take the blame. Why? Because it makes them feel safe, Vance explained. If they think you believe it was your fault, they will relax. They will think they got away with it. And when people think they are safe, they get sloppy. They talk. They keep trophies. They make mistakes. I nodded slowly, understanding the strategy. It was a Trojan horse. I would walk back into their lives, into the house of the people who tried to murder me, and I would smile. I need you to get inside that house, Vance said. I need you to find where they bought the materials for the heater. I need to know if they have any digital records, and I need you to get them talking about the money. I can do that, I said. Vance looked at me, his expression serious. This is dangerous, Monica. If they realize you know, you are in that house alone with them. They have already tried to kill you once. I thought about the snow. I thought about the portfolio turning to ash. I thought about the car driving away in the dark. I am not afraid of them, I said, and I was surprised to find that it was true. The fear had burned away with my apartment. All that was left was a cold, hard resolve. They took my home. They took my career. They took my trust. I am going to take everything they have. Vance nodded, satisfied. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small black device, no larger than a button. Audio recorder, he said. High fidelity, 6-hour battery life, magnetized back. Hide it well. I took the device. Closing my fist around it, it felt heavy, like a weapon. One more thing, Vance said as he stood up to unlock the door. Do not sign anything. They will try to get you to sign over the insurance rights to the apartment immediately, probably under the guise of managing the claim for you. Stall them. I will, I said. I stood up. I looked at the photos on the table one last time, the blackened ruin of my life. Inspector, I said. Call me Silas. Silas, I looked him in the eye. When this is over, I want to be the one to tell them. I want to see their faces when they realize it was me. You will get your chance, Silas said, opening the door. Now go. Make the call. Put on the performance of your life. I walked out of the interrogation room and into the busy corridor of the station. I pulled out my phone. My thumb hovered over Elena's number. I took a deep breath, forcing my breathing to become shallow, forcing tears into my eyes, summoning the trembling, pathetic girl they wanted me to be. I pressed dial. "Hello, Elena?" I said, letting my voice crack and break into a sob. "It's me. Please, I think I did something terrible. The police are here. I'm so scared." I waited. "Oh, you poor thing." Elena's voice purred on the other end, smooth as silk and poisonous as arsenic. "Don't worry, darling. Why don't you come over for dinner? We can fix everything." The trap was set, and this time, I wasn't the prey. The performance began the moment I pressed the call button. I stood on the corner of a windy street, huddled into the oversized coat Mrs. Henderson had given me, and summoned every ounce of vulnerability I possessed. I needed to be the broken little girl they remembered. I needed to be the failure they had always predicted I would be. "Elena?" I whimpered into the phone, pitching my voice up an octave, injecting it with a tremor that was half acting and half suppressed rage. "Monica?" Her voice was sharp, guarded. She was likely expecting a lawyer or an accusation. "I don't know what to do," I sobbed, letting the tears I had held back in the interrogation room flow freely now, though for a very different reason. "The police kept asking me about the wiring. They think it was an electrical fault. They think I overloaded the sockets with my drafting equipment. I told them I didn't mean to. I'm so scared. Elena, I have no money. I have no clothes. I'm sitting on a curb, and I just want to go home." The silence on the other end lasted for 3 heartbeats. I could practically hear the gears turning in her head. She was calculating. If I believed it was an accident, if I believed it was my fault, then I wasn't a threat. I was just a victim, and victims were easy to manage. "Oh, you poor, sweet darling." Elena's voice shifted instantly. The ice melted into a sickeningly sweet syrup. "Hush now. Don't cry. It was an accident. These things happen when we are careless. But we are family. Where are you? You must come to the house immediately. We will have dinner. We will figure this out together." "Really?" I sniffled. "Dad won't be mad?" "Your father is worried sick," she lied effortlessly. "Come home, Monica. We are waiting." I hung up and stared at the screen. The screen was cracked, much like my trust in humanity. I hailed a rideshare with the last few dollars on my linked credit card account before the bank froze it, and watched the city blur past as we drove toward the wealthy suburbs. The Hargrave estate was a sprawling neo-Georgian mansion that screamed old money, even though my father had only bought it 10 years ago to cement his status. As the car crunched up the gravel driveway, I looked at the manicured hedges and the imposing brick facade. It used to be the place where I spent my weekends trying to earn my father's approval. Now, it looked like a mausoleum. It was a beautiful, expensive cage where 2 predators lived, and I was walking right into the lion's den with nothing but a recording device the size of a button in my pocket. Elena opened the door before I could even knock. She was wearing a silk blouse and pearls, looking like the picture of maternal concern. She pulled me into a hug that smelled of Chanel No. 5 and hypocrisy. "Look at you," she cooed, holding me at arm's length and scanning my soot-stained face. "You look dreadful. Come inside. It is warm." I walked into the foyer. The house was exactly as I remembered. Pristine, silent, and cold. The marble floors shone under the chandelier light. "Franklin is in the study," Elena said, guiding me with a hand on my back. Her touch made my skin crawl. But I leaned into it, playing the part of the exhausted survivor. We entered the study. My father was sitting behind his massive mahogany desk, surrounded by leather-bound books he had never read. He looked up as I entered. He didn't stand. He didn't rush over to hug me. He simply took off his reading glasses and sighed. The sound of a man burdened by an incompetent subordinate. "Monica," he said. His voice was deep and commanding, the voice that had terrified me as a child. I see you have finally decided to come to us. I'm sorry, Dad, I said, keeping my head down, staring at the Persian rug. I didn't know where else to go. Sit. He gestured to one of the stiff leather chairs opposite him. I sat. Elena hovered by the door like a prison warden. I spoke to our family attorney this morning, Franklin began, lacing his fingers together. This fire is a disaster, Monica. A complete disaster. The police are already asking questions about negligence. If they decide to charge you with reckless endangerment for faulty wiring or misuse of appliances, you could be facing heavy fines, maybe even jail time. He was lying. Silas had told me the police suspected arson, not negligence, but Franklin needed me to be afraid. He needed me to believe he was the only thing standing between me and prison. I didn't mean to, I whispered, squeezing my eyes shut. I just plugged in the heater Elena gave me and— The heater? Franklin interrupted sharply. You must have plugged it into a bad strip, or left it too close to the curtains. The device itself was top of the line. Do not try to shift the blame. Monica, that is unbecoming. I know, I said quickly. It was my fault. I was stupid. Franklin nodded, satisfied with my submission. He opened a drawer and pulled out a thick stack of documents. Because you are clearly in a state of shock and unable to make rational decisions, he said, sliding the papers across the desk. I have prepared a solution. This is a limited power of attorney. It grants me the authority to handle all dealings with the insurance company, the fire department, and the police on your behalf. I will use my connections to smooth this over. I will make sure the investigation goes away. We will say it was a tragic accident, and we will handle the financial fallout. I looked at the papers. The legal jargon swam before my eyes, but the intent was clear. If I signed this, I was giving him control over the insurance payout. He would take the money for the damaged property, my life's work, and I would see nothing. He would pay off his debts with the ashes of my home. You would do that for me? I asked, looking up at him with wide, teary eyes. We are family, Franklin said, his face a mask of solemn duty. I cannot let my daughter's foolishness destroy our name. Sign it, Monica. Let me fix your mess. Again. I need a drink, I said, my hand trembling as I reached for the pen and then pulled back. Can we talk about this over dinner? I haven't eaten in 24 hours. Franklin looked annoyed at the delay, but Elena stepped in. Of course, she said, her voice bright. The poor girl is starving. Come, Franklin, business can wait 1 hour. Let's feed her. We moved to the dining room. The table was set with their finest china. There was a roast chicken, roasted vegetables, and a bottle of expensive red wine that had already been breathed. It was a surreal, macabre tableau. We were sitting down to a family dinner less than a day after they had tried to incinerate me. Elena poured me a large glass of wine. Drink up, she urged. It will calm your nerves. I took a sip. It was excellent wine. I wanted to throw it in her face. So, Elena said as she served me a portion of chicken, we have been thinking about what is best for you. Monica, after all this trauma, the fire, the loss of your work, it is too much for anyone to handle. Especially someone with your history of sensitivity. I gripped my fork. What do you mean? We think you need a break, Franklin said, cutting his meat with surgical precision. A real break. There is a wonderful facility in Vermont. Quiet, secluded, excellent doctors. We think you should go there for a few months, just until you are stable again. I almost laughed. They wanted to commit to me, if I was in a mental institution. I couldn't ask questions about the insurance money. I couldn't talk to the police without my credibility being questioned. It was the perfect disposal method. A mental hospital? I asked, keeping my voice small. A wellness retreat, Elena corrected, smiling over the rim of her glass. She raised her hand to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. And that was when the world stopped. The sleeve of her silk blouse slipped down a fraction of an inch. On her left wrist, gleaming under the chandelier light, was a watch. It was not just any watch. It was a vintage Rolex date, just with a custom mother-of-pearl dial. I knew every scratch on the bezel. I knew the way the second hand swept rather than ticked. It was my watch. It was the watch my mother, my biological mother, had left me when she died. It was the one thing I kept in the velvet box on my dresser. The one thing I never wore to work because I was terrified of damaging it. I had cried over the loss of that watch this morning. I had told Silas it was melted in the inferno, but there it was, on Elena's wrist. The implications hit me like a physical blow. She hadn't just bought the materials to burn my house. She had entered my apartment before the fire. She had rifled through my things. She had stolen my most precious possession, my mother's legacy, and then she had set the timer on the heater to burn everything else. And the audacity, the sheer, breathtaking arrogance of wearing it to dinner with me. She thought I was so broken, so stupid. Or perhaps she thought the fire had been so total that I would assume this was just a similar watch. Or maybe she just didn't care. Maybe she liked the thrill of it. My vision blurred with red. I wanted to leap across the table and strangle her. I wanted to scream. I wanted to stab her hand with my fork. Control. A voice inside my head whispered. It sounded like Silas Vance. If you react now, you lose. If you scream, they win. I forced myself to swallow the piece of chicken in my mouth. It tasted like sawdust. That sounds, I choked out, forcing a smile that felt like it was cracking my face. That sounds peaceful. Vermont is nice this time of year. Elena beamed at Franklin. See? I told you she would be reasonable. I just need to think about it, I said. And the papers. I'll sign them. I promise. But I left my glasses well. I don't have my glasses. They burned. I let out a jagged laugh. I can't read the fine print without them. Can I just take the night to sleep? I'll sign everything in the morning before I go to Vermont. Franklin looked at me, assessing. He saw a defeated girl, drunk on wine and trauma, ready to be shipped off to an asylum. Fine, he said, wiping his mouth with a linen napkin. First thing in the morning, we will drive you to the lawyer's office. Then we will arrange the transport to Vermont. Thank you, Dad, I said. I am going to retire to the study, Franklin announced. I have calls to make. Elena, ensure she has a guest room. This was my chance. Dad, I said, standing up a little too quickly, swaying intentionally. I think I dropped my phone in your study. When we were talking, can I just grab it? Be quick, he grunted. Walking toward the living room to pour himself a brandy, I walked back into the study alone. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I had 30 seconds, maybe less. I moved to the desk. The stack of papers was still there. I pretended to look for my phone, patting the leather surface. I crouched down, checking under the chair. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the small black disc Silas had given me. My hand was shaking violently. Steady, steady. I felt along the underside of the heavy mahogany desk, right where Franklin's knees would be when he sat. The wood was rough. I pressed the magnet against the metal bracing of the drawer mechanism. It clicked softly, too loud in the silent room. I froze. Monica? Elena's voice called from the hallway. Did you find it? Yes, I shouted back, standing up and smoothing my skirt. Just got it. I walked out of the study, my heart rate probably close to 200 beats per minute. I had done it. The bug was planted. I think I'm going to go, I said to Elena, who was waiting in the foyer. I can't stay here tonight. It has too many memories. I'll go back to the hotel. I'll meet you at the lawyer's at 9. I promise. Elena looked unhappy. She wanted me under her roof, under her control, but she also looked tired. And perhaps she didn't want to deal with a weeping stepdaughter all night. 9 o'clock sharp. Monica, she said, her voice hardening. Do not be late, and do not do anything stupid. I won't, I said. I just want this to be over. So do we, she said, and for the first time that night, she was telling the truth. I walked out of the front door, the cold night air hitting my face. I didn't have a ride. I would have to walk to the main road to get a signal. I walked down the driveway, my legs feeling like lead. I passed the 3-car garage. The door was open, just a crack. Inside, I could see the sleek black Tesla that Franklin loved more than he had ever loved me. I stopped. Silas had said I needed evidence of motive. He said they were broke. I looked at the house. The lights were on in the living room. They were celebrating. They were probably toasting to their brilliance. I slipped into the garage. It smelled of motor oil and expensive car wax. I scanned the space. There was a recycling bin against the wall, overflowing with empty wine bottles, far more than 2 people should be drinking in a week. Next to it was the general trash can. I lifted the lid. It was mostly kitchen waste, but right on top, resting on a coffee-stained filter, was a crumpled ball of heavy cream-colored paper. I reached in, ignoring the grime, and uncrumpled it. It was a legal notice. The header was in bold red letters. Final notice of default. I angled it toward the moonlight coming through the garage window. R.E. Vanguard Structures, LLC. Outstanding debt, $8,400,000. Plaintiff. Ironclad Construction Holdings. Immediate foreclosure proceedings to commence on February 10th if payment is not received. February 10th? That was next week. They didn't just need money, they needed a miracle. And I was the sacrifice they had placed on the altar to conjure it. I shoved the paper into my pocket, right next to my phone. I had the motive. I had the means, the watch. I had the bug planted to catch the confession. I slipped out of the garage and began the long walk down the driveway. I didn't look back at the house. I didn't cry. The tears were gone, replaced by a cold, hard determination that felt a lot like the steel of the axe the firefighters had used to smash my door. They wanted me to sign a power of attorney? I would sign something. All right. I would sign their arrest warrants. Enjoy the watch, Elena, I whispered to the darkness. Because time is running out. The neon sign of Louie's all-night diner flickered with a dying buzz, casting an intermittent red glow over the wet pavement. It was 4 a.m. I sat in a booth at the very back, my hands wrapped around a mug of black coffee that had gone cold 20 minutes ago. The diner was empty except for a truck driver asleep at the counter, and a waitress who looked like she had been working since the 1980s. I was not looking at the menu. I was looking at Silas Vance. He had set up a small command center on the cracked Formica table, a ruggedized laptop, a pair of heavy noise-canceling headphones, and the small receiver unit that was currently syncing with the bug I had planted under my father's desk. The air between us was thick with tension, a silent electric current that made the hair on my arms stand up. "It is uploading the cache now," Silas said, his voice low. He tapped a key, and a green progress bar crawled across the screen. "The signal is strong. You placed it perfectly. Monica." I didn't feel pride. I felt a nausea that had nothing to do with the greasy smell of the diner. "Did they say anything after I left?" "Let's find out," Silas said. He unplugged the headphones and switched the audio to the laptop speakers, keeping the volume low. On the screen, a waveform appeared, jagged peaks and valleys representing the voices of the people who had raised me. Static. Then, the sound of a heavy door slamming shut. "She is gone!" My father's voice came through the speakers. It sounded distorted, tinny, but the anger was unmistakable. "Did you see her eyes? Elena? She knows something. She was asking too many questions about the insurance." "She knows nothing," Elena's voice replied. It was dismissive, arrogant. "She is a frightened little mouse. Did you see how she trembled when you mentioned the police? She will sign the papers tomorrow. We will ship her off to that asylum in Vermont, and by the time she gets out, the company will be solvent again." I gripped the edge of the table. Hearing them plan my institutionalization so casually was chilling, but it was what came next that stopped my heart. "We cannot bank on her signing," Franklin snapped, "and we still have a problem. The heater. The fire investigator said they found the core. It didn't melt completely. It was supposed to burn at 3,000 degrees, Elena hissed. The guy at the supply store swore it would incinerate everything within a 10-foot radius, if the element survived. If they find the bypass wire, we are finished, Franklin interrupted. We need that money. Elena, the bridge loan is due on Monday. If we don't pay Ironclad, they seize everything, the house, the cars, the company. We will get the property insurance, Elena said soothingly. $500,000 is enough to stall them. It is not enough, Franklin roared. The audio spiked, glowing red on the screen. We needed the full package. We needed the life insurance payout. $2 million. Elena, that was the plan. If she had just stayed in bed, if the smoke had gotten to her before she woke up, we would be clearing the entire debt. The diner went silent. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator behind the counter. I stared at the laptop, my blood turning to ice. Did you hear that? I whispered, my voice barely audible. He said if the smoke had gotten to me. Silas didn't look at me. His jaw was set hard, his eyes fixed on the screen. Keep listening. Stop panicking, Elena said on the recording. So she survived. We lost the $2 million. We still have $500,000 from the condo policy, and we have the assets. What assets? Franklin asked. Her furniture is ash. Oh, please, Elena scoffed. Do you really think I let those original oil paintings burn? Or the antique silver set she inherited from your mother? I was in there at 2 p.m. while she was at work. I swapped the paintings for high-quality prints. I took the silver. I took the jewelry. It is all safely in the safe deposit box at the downtown branch. We can sell it all through the fence in New York. That is another $50,000. Easy. The recording ended with the sound of glass clinking, a toast to their own cleverness. I sat back against the vinyl booth, feeling hollowed out. I had known they were greedy. I had known they were selfish. But this was predatory. They hadn't just hoped for a fire to claim the insurance money on the building. They had actively planned for my death. They had done the math, calculated the value of my life versus their debt, and decided I was worth more as a corpse. $2 million, I said, the words tasting like copper. That is the price of a daughter. Silas closed the laptop lid halfway. Giving me a moment, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. I did some digging while you were at the house, he said. I tracked the purchase Elena mentioned. She didn't buy the heating element at a Home Depot. She went to a supply yard in the industrial district, a place that sells to unlicensed contractors. They don't keep digital records, but they do keep a paper ledger. He slid a photocopy across the table. It was a grainy image of a receipt. Handwritten. Item, ceramic thermal core, industrial grade. Item, acetone accelerant, 2 gallons. Date, January 28th. She paid cash, Silas explained. But the clerk remembers her. It is not every day a woman in a Burberry coat walks into a scrapyard asking for components to build a delayed ignition device. So we have them, I said, feeling a surge of hope. We have the tape. We have the receipt. We have the motive. Silas shook his head slowly. It is not that simple. Monica. What do you mean? They confessed. You just heard it. I heard it, Silas said. And you heard it, but a jury will never hear it. That recording is inadmissible. Why? Because we did not have a warrant, Silas said, his voice grim. Illinois is a 2-party consent state for audio recording, but more importantly, planting a bug in a private residence without a court order is a felony. If we take this to the police, any defense lawyer, even a bad one, will get it thrown out as fruit of the poisonous tree. And worse, they could charge you with illegal surveillance. I felt the room spin. So it was for nothing? I risked my life going back there for nothing? No, Silas said firmly. It wasn't for nothing. We know the truth now. We know exactly what happened. We know about the theft. We know about the swap. Intelligence is never useless. But to make an arrest stick, to put them away for 20 years, we need evidence that was obtained legally. We need something that places Elena at the scene of the crime. He tapped the table. Think, Monica. She said she was in your apartment at 2 p.m. She swapped the paintings. She planted the heater. Did anyone see her? The doorman? No, I said, rubbing my temples. The doorman takes his break from 2 to 3. The desk is empty. That is why she chose that time. She knows the building's schedule. Cameras? Silas asked. The building lobby? The lobby cameras have been broken for a month, I said. The management company was waiting for parts. She knew that too. She is thorough. I closed my eyes, trying to visualize my apartment hallway. It was a long corridor. 4 units. My neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, lived at the end. I lived near the elevator. Wait, my eyes snapped open. The cloud, I said. Silas looked at me. What? The cloud, I repeated, my brain firing rapidly. About 2 months ago, I had a package stolen from my doorstep. I didn't want to make a fuss with the building management, so I bought a smart doorbell. But the condo board has strict rules about modifying the door exterior, so I couldn't mount it outside. So you didn't install it? I did, I said, leaning forward. But I installed it inside. I mounted it on the peephole, facing out through the glass lens. It's practically invisible from the outside. It records motion in the hallway. It uploads everything to a private server. Silas's eyes widened. Does it have a timestamp? Yes. Does it have night vision? Yes. Do your parents know about it? No, I said. I never told anyone. I just set it up and forgot about it. It runs on a battery. Can you access it? Silas asked, pushing the laptop toward me. My phone is dead, I said. But I can log in through a browser. I pulled the laptop closer. My fingers flew across the keyboard. I navigated to the security company's website. I typed in my username, then the password. Incorrect password. I swore under my breath. I changed it last month. Think, Monica, think. I tried a variation. Capital M, number 1, exclamation point, access granted. The interface loaded. A grid of thumbnails appeared on the screen, labeled by date and time. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Go to yesterday, Silas commanded, leaning over my shoulder. Go to 2 in the afternoon. I scrolled back. February 3rd, 1400 hours. There was a file. Motion detected. 1412. I clicked play. The video was fisheye distorted, looking out through the peephole of my door. The hallway was empty. Then, the elevator doors at the end of the hall opened. A woman stepped out. She was wearing a long trench coat and a wide-brimmed hat, but she looked up to check the apartment numbers, and for a split second, her face was perfectly framed in the center of the lens. It was Elena. She was wearing blue latex gloves. She was carrying a large, empty duffel bag. I watched, mesmerized, as she walked right up to my door. I saw her hand reach into her pocket and pull out a key she must have copied months ago when I left my spare set at their house for an emergency. She unlocked my door. The view swung wildly as the door opened, showing the hallway wall, then darkness as she entered and closed the door behind her. She is in, Silas whispered. That is breaking and entering. Wait, I said. Watch the exit. I fast-forwarded the timeline. Motion detected. 1448. 36 minutes later, the door opened again. Elena stepped out, but the duffel bag was no longer empty. It was bulging, heavy, rectangular shapes pressing against the canvas, the paintings, the silver, and in her other hand, she was holding the empty cardboard box that had contained the heater. She locked the door. She checked the hallway left and right. Then she walked back to the elevator and disappeared. Got you, I whispered. Silas let out a long breath, a sound of pure professional satisfaction. That is it. That is the silver bullet. We have video evidence of her entering your apartment unauthorized, wearing gloves, removing property, and leaving behind the device that caused the fire. This is not just arson anymore. This is burglary, grand larceny, and attempted murder. Is it admissible? I asked. Completely, Silas grinned, a shark-like expression that terrified me and thrilled me at the same time. It is your camera, on your property, recording a public hallway. There is no expectation of privacy in a common corridor. Monica, this is enough for a warrant. This is enough for a raid. I looked at the image of Elena on the screen. She looked so smug, so confident. She had no idea that while she was stealing my past, I was recording her future. So we go to the police now? I asked. We could, Silas said, closing the laptop. We could go to the district attorney right now, wake him up, and have them in cuffs by breakfast. He paused, looking at me. But you said you wanted to see their faces. You said you wanted to be the one to tell them. I do, I said. Then we hold off, Silas said. Just for a few hours. Let them walk into the trap. You have a meeting with them at 9, right? Yes, at the lawyer's office. Let them think they have won, Silas said. Let them put the pen in your hand. Let them feel the victory, and then we burn them down, I finished. We will need to coordinate with the prosecutor, Silas said, standing up and throwing a $20 bill on the table. I have a friend in the DA's office. I will wake him up. We will get the warrant signed within the hour. But we won't execute them at their house. We will execute them at the meeting. I stood up, pulling Mrs. Henderson's coat tighter around me. The despair I had felt standing in the snow was gone. The fear of the interrogation room was gone. I felt something new. It was cold, sharp, and incredibly powerful. I was no longer the victim of a fire. I was the fire. Let's go, I said. I have a performance to finish. We walked out of the diner into the pre-dawn chill. The city was starting to wake up, somewhere in the suburbs. Franklin and Elena were sleeping soundly, dreaming of insurance checks and a debt-free life. They didn't know that the sun was rising on their execution day. I thought I was ahead. I thought that having the video evidence of Elena entering my apartment with a duffel bag and leaving with my stolen life was the checkmate. I thought I could walk into that lawyer's office at 9 in the morning and dictate the terms of their surrender. I was naive. I had forgotten that my father did not play chess. He played scorched earth. It started at 6:30 in the morning. Silas and I had just left the diner and I was sitting in the passenger seat of his battered sedan, charging my phone. We were parked near the lake, watching the sun struggle to rise over the gray water. I felt a strange sense of calm, the calm of a soldier cleaning their rifle before the final charge. Then my phone buzzed. It was a push notification from a local news app. Breaking. Local real estate mogul, Franklin Hargrave, speaks out on tragic high-rise blaze. My stomach dropped. I tapped the notification. A live video feed loaded on the screen. There he was, my father. He was standing in front of a bank of microphones, not at the charred remains of my apartment, but on the manicured lawn of his estate. He looked devastated. His tie was slightly askew, a calculated imperfection to show distress. Elena stood slightly behind him, wearing black, dabbing her dry eyes with a handkerchief. "Turn up the volume," I whispered, my voice sounding hollow in the car. Silas reached over and cranked the Bluetooth audio. "A tragedy that every parent fears," Franklin was saying, his voice cracking with practiced emotion. "We have tried for years to help Monica. We have tried to get her into rehabilitation programs. We have tried to support her through her mental health struggles and her battles with substances." "Substances?" I shrieked. "I drink wine on Fridays. I have never touched a drug in my life," Franklin continued, leaning into the microphones. "We believe this fire was a cry for help, a result of a young woman who has lost her way. We are just grateful she is alive, and we are asking the police for leniency. We want to get her the treatment she needs, not a prison cell. We are prepared to pay for all damages caused by her instability." I stared at the screen, paralyzed. He was not just defending himself. He was actively assassinating my character on live television. He was painting a narrative before the police even released a report. To the world. I was no longer a victim of arson. I was a drug-addled, mentally unstable daughter who had torched her own home in a fit of madness, and he was the saintly father trying to clean up the mess. "He is destroying me," I said. watching the comments section on the live stream explode with sympathy for him. "He is burying me alive." "He is terrified," Silas said, his grip on the steering wheel tightening. "This is a defensive move, Monica. He knows you survived. He knows you are out there. He is trying to discredit you before you can open your mouth." The phone buzzed again. This time it was a call. The caller ID read, Horizon Greenscapes, HR Director. "Don't answer it," Silas warned. "I have to," I said. I swiped right. "Hello?" "Monica." The voice on the other end was clipped, formal, and icy. It was David, the man who had hired me, the man who had praised my vision 2 days ago. "We just saw the news conference." "David, listen to me," I pleaded. "It is a lie. My father is lying. There are no drugs." I didn't start the fire. "Monica, stop," David interrupted. "We are a public-facing company. We deal with city contracts. We cannot have this kind of volatility associated with our brand. The board met this morning on an emergency call." "You can't do this," I said, tears stinging my eyes. "My portfolio burned. I can redraw it. I can fix it." "It is not about the drawings, Monica. It is about the liability, effective immediately. You are placed on unpaid administrative leave pending the outcome of the police investigation, and frankly, given the severity of the allegations your father just made, you should expect a termination letter by the end of the week." The line went dead. I dropped the phone into my lap. I had lost my home. I had lost my possessions. And now, in the span of 3 minutes, I had lost my career. The reputation I had spent 6 years building, the late nights, the awards, the networking, was gone, incinerated by a lie told by the man who was supposed to protect me. "They fired me," I whispered. "They are reacting to the noise," Silas said. "We can fix this, once the truth comes out." "How will the truth come out?" I yelled, turning to him. "Look at him. He owns the narrative. Who are they going to believe? The respected developer or the unstable daughter he just diagnosed on Channel 5? I picked up my phone to check my banking app. I needed to know if I had enough money to hire a defamation lawyer. I logged in. Account status, frozen. Reason, suspicious activity / guarantor request. I stared at the red text, my checking account, my savings, my emergency fund, all locked. Franklin had co-signed my first bank account when I was 18, and like a fool. I had never removed him as a guarantor because it gave me a better interest rate. He had used that old link to flag my accounts for fraud. I was penniless, I was homeless, I was jobless, and I was being hunted by the court of public opinion. My phone pinged with a text message. It was from Elena. "Stop fighting. Darling, we know you have no money. We know you have no job. The offer for Vermont is still on the table. Come to the office at 9. Sign the papers. We will take care of you, if you try to fight us. The police will see the medical records we are prepared to fabricate. Be a good girl." I threw the phone against the dashboard. It bounced off the plastic and landed in the footwell. "I can't do this," I said, putting my head in my hands. "They win. They have more money. They have more power. I should just sign the papers. At least I won't go to jail. Monica, look at me." Silas's voice was sharp, cutting through the panic. He reached over and grabbed my shoulder, forcing me to turn toward him. "You are looking at this wrong," he said. "You see a powerful man crushing you. I see a desperate criminal making a lot of noise because he knows the walls are closing in. Innocent people do not go on television at 6 a.m. to smear their children. Innocent people wait for the investigation. He is panicked." "It doesn't matter," I cried. "He cut off my resources." "He cut off your money," Silas corrected. "He did not cut off your evidence. He did not erase that video from the cloud, and he definitely did not silence the witness I found while you were sleeping." I wiped my eyes. "What witness? You said the guy at the supply yard only kept a paper ledger." "He did," Silas said. "But people watch TV. Monica, especially people who sell illegal explosives and don't want to go to federal prison for accessory to murder." Silas pulled out his own phone. He showed me a text thread. The clerk at the supply yard is named Gary. Silas explained. I left my card with him yesterday. I told him that if he didn't talk to me, the police would eventually find him and charge him with domestic terrorism for selling bomb parts. He just texted me 10 minutes ago. He saw your father's press conference. He saw Elena standing there. And he recognized her, Silas said. He remembers the hat. He remembers the coat. And most importantly, he remembers that she asked him specifically how long the timer could be set for. He is willing to testify. He wants a plea deal. He will identify Elena as the purchaser of the device. I sat back, the breath returning to my lungs. We have a witness, I said. We have a witness, Silas confirmed. We have the cloud video of her entering your apartment with the box. We have the video of her leaving with the stolen goods. We have the recording of them conspiring to commit insurance fraud. And now, we have the seller identifying her. So we go to the police, I said. Right now? No, Silas said, his eyes narrowing. Not yet. If we go to the police now, Franklin will use his high-priced lawyers to delay. He will claim the clerk is lying. He will claim the video is doctored. He will drag this out for years while you starve. Then what do? We use his own weapon against him, Silas said. He wants a spectacle. We give him a spectacle. He wants a public confession. We give him one. A plan began to form in my mind. It was dangerous. It was theatrical. But it was the only way to clear my name completely. I didn't just want them arrested. I wanted them exposed. I wanted the cameras that were currently broadcasting my shame to capture their downfall. He wants me to meet him at the lawyer's office at 9, I said. To sign the papers. Change the venue, Silas said. Tell him you are ready to surrender. Tell him you want to do it properly. Tell him you want to apologize to the family in front of the press, to show the world you are taking responsibility. He won't be able to resist. His ego is too big. He will think he has broken you completely. There is a conference room at the downtown library, I said, my mind racing. It has glass walls. It is public. It is perfect. I picked up my phone from the floor. The screen was cracked, but it still worked. I typed a reply to Elena. You win. I have nothing left. I am ready to go to Vermont. But I want to do this right. I want to apologize to you and Dad publicly so the police know I am cooperating. Meet me at the Central Library conference room at 10 o'clock. Bring the lawyers. Bring the press. I will sign everything. The reply came 30 seconds later. Good decision. We will be there. Do not embarrass us. I looked at Silas. The fear was gone. The sadness was gone. All that was left was a cold, burning rage. They think they are coming to accept my surrender, I said. They are coming to their own funeral, Silas replied. I need to get ready, I said. I look like a victim. I need to look like a penitent daughter. I have a change of clothes in the trunk, Silas said. My daughter's old things. They might fit. We need to get to the library early. We need to set up the audio. We need to position Gary the clerk in the next room. And we need to make sure the prosecutor is watching. Silas, I said, looking out at the city that had turned its back on me. When this is over, when they are in handcuffs, do you think I can ever get my name back? Silas started the car. Monica, when this is over, everyone in this city is going to know your name, not as the girl who burned down her apartment, but as the woman who took down a titan. We drove toward the city center. The radio was still playing excerpts of my father's speech. He was talking about tough love. I smiled. He had no idea what tough love really was. But he was about to find out. One more thing, I said, pulling up the contact for the local news station that had aired the interview. I need to send an anonymous tip. I need to make sure every camera crew in the city is at that library. Tell them Monica Hargrave is going to reveal the true cause of the fire, Silas suggested. No, I said, typing the message. I'll tell them. Franklin Hargrave is about to receive the surprise of his life. I hit send. The trap was set. The stage was prepared. My parents had spent my entire life teaching me that image was everything, that truth could be manipulated, and that people would believe whatever you showed them. They were right, and I was about to show them a reality they never saw coming. I sat in the passenger seat of Silas's car, the engine idling quietly, and typed the words that felt like swallowing razor blades. The screen of my cracked phone glowed with the draft of a social media post that would destroy what little dignity I had left in the eyes of the public. But it was the necessary bait for the trap we were setting. I want to publicly apologize to my parents, Franklin and Elena Hargrave. My recent actions were the result of personal struggles that I have hidden for too long. I am deeply sorry for the pain I have caused and for the destruction of my home. I am ready to accept their help and take responsibility for the damages. I will be meeting them today to sign over my remaining assets to make restitution. Please respect our privacy as we heal as a family. I read it twice. It was perfect. It was pathetic, submissive, and exactly what a guilty daughter would write. It validated Franklin's press conference. It confirmed his narrative. "Are you ready to post that?" Silas asked, checking the battery level on his recording equipment. "It's the only way to get them in the room," I said. I hit post. Within seconds, the notifications started rolling in. Likes, comments. "So brave of you to admit it. Your poor parents. Get help. Monica." It was nauseating. I watched my reputation dissolve in real time, replaced by the caricature of the unstable addict my father had invented. "It is done," I said, putting the phone away. "They will see it. They will be gloating." "Let them gloat," Silas said, his voice grim. "Overconfidence is a sedative. It makes people slow. It makes them sloppy." We had 3 hours before the meeting. While Silas went to coordinate with the district attorney, a man named Miller, who was apparently very interested in the fact that a prominent real estate developer had been caught on tape conspiring to commit insurance fraud. I had work to do. I needed a prop. I went to a stationery store around the corner and bought a thick, black leather binder. I also bought a pack of dividers and a high-quality label maker. On the spine of the binder, I printed a label. Asset Transfer Power of Attorney, Monica Hargrave. Inside, I placed a stack of papers. To the casual observer, they looked like legal documents, deeds, and bank statements, but they were not. I spent the next hour at a print shop, carefully arranging the real contents of the binder. Section 1. The photos of the arson investigation, focusing on the bypassed safety switch in the heater. Section 2. The grainy, zoomed-in still frames from the cloud video showing Elena entering my apartment with empty hands and leaving with a bulging bag. Section 3. The photocopy of the receipt from the illegal supply yard, with Elena's purchase of the ceramic core highlighted in neon yellow. Section 4. A transcript of the audio recording from under Franklin's desk, specifically the lines about the $2 million life insurance policy. I hole-punched the evidence and snapped the ring shut. It was a heavy book. It had the weight of a tombstone. "This is not a surrender," I whispered to myself, running my hand over the leather cover. "This is an indictment." At 9 o'clock, 1 hour before the meeting, I asked Silas to drop me off 2 blocks from my apartment building. I needed to see it. I needed to stand in the wreckage one last time to steel myself for what was coming. The yellow police tape was still fluttering in the wind. The windows on the 3rd floor were boarded up with plywood, dark scars against the brick facade. The smell of wet ash and charred insulation still hung in the air. Acrid and bitter, I ducked under the tape. The lobby door was boarded, but the service entrance around the back was pried open, likely by looters or curious kids. I slipped inside and climbed the stairs. My footsteps echoed in the damp, dark stairwell. When I reached the 3rd floor, the devastation was absolute. My front door was gone, replaced by a gaping maw of blackened wood. I stepped inside. The layout was familiar, yet alien. The walls were stripped to the studs. The floor was a treacherous landscape of debris. I walked to the center of the living room, to the spot where the heater had stood. The floorboards there were burned through completely. revealing the concrete subfloor beneath. This was where they had tried to kill me. I stood there, closing my eyes, listening to the ghost of the fire. I remembered the heat. I remembered the panic. But mostly, I remembered the silence on the phone line when my father told me to handle it myself. "You didn't just burn a condo," I said to the empty room. "You burned the bridge, and now you're going to drown in the river." I felt a vibration in my pocket. It was my phone. I pulled it out, expecting a text from Silas or a taunt from Elena. But the caller ID was a number I didn't recognize. It was an automated system from the First National Bank. "This is an automated fraud alert for the account ending in 4922. A wire transfer of large value has been initiated. If you did not authorize this transaction, please press 1. I frowned. Account 4922? That wasn't my checking account. That was the trust fund my grandmother had set up for me. It was supposed to be untouchable until I turned 30. Unless there was a medical emergency or if I was declared mentally incompetent. I pressed 1 immediately. The system connected me to a human operator. "This is Monica Hargrave," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "I just got an alert." "Ms. Hargrave," the operator said, sounding relieved. "We tried to call you earlier. We received a fax directive this morning requesting the immediate liquidation of the trust assets, totaling $250,000, to be transferred to a holding account under the name of Vanguard Structures, my father's company." "I didn't sign that," I said, gripping a piece of charred wood that used to be my doorframe. "The document has your signature," the operator said, "and it is countersigned by a Mr. Franklin Hargrave, acting as your guardian under a medical power of attorney. The document claims you are currently incapacitated and require the funds for urgent inpatient psychiatric care." I let out a sharp, incredulous breath. They hadn't even waited for me to sign the papers at the meeting. They had forged my signature and invented a medical emergency to drain my inheritance before I even walked into the room. They were so desperate, so greedy, that they couldn't wait another 2 hours. "It is a forgery," I said, my voice cold and steady. "I am not incapacitated. I am not in a hospital, and I did not authorize a cent to be moved to Vanguard Structures." "I see," the operator said, typing furiously. "In that case, we will stop the transfer immediately and flag this as identity theft and wire fraud. Do you want to file a formal report?" "Yes," I said. "And I need you to email me a copy of that faxed request with the forged signature, right now." "I can do that." I hung up. A minute later, the email arrived. I opened the attachment. There it was, my signature, looking shaky and weak, clearly traced or faked by someone who didn't know how I looped my G's. And next to it, Franklin's bold, arrogant scrawl. I forwarded the document to Silas. "Add this to the pile." I texted, "Wire fraud, identity theft, elder trust abuse." This was the final piece. The arson was violent. But this was the proof of their financial desperation. This tied the fire to the debt. It was the motive wrapped in a bow. I left the apartment. I didn't look back. There was nothing there for me anymore. My future was waiting in a glass room at the Central Library. I met Silas in the alley behind the library at 9:45. He was dressed in a dark suit, looking every bit the federal agent he used to be, although today he was just a private citizen with a vendetta. "The room is prepped," Silas said. I rented the main conference suite on the second floor, glass walls, visible to the entire atrium. I set up 3 cameras, one hidden in the plant in the corner, one in the smoke detector, and one right in the center of the table. Disguised as a speakerphone hub, the live stream is set to broadcast to a private server that the DA is monitoring in real time. The press will be waiting in the lobby. "Is the DA ready?" "He is drafting the warrants as we speak," Silas said. He said if you can get them to admit to the forgery or the arson on tape, the police will move in. They are stationed in the staff room next door. I nodded. I checked my appearance in the side mirror of the car. I was wearing a simple gray dress that belonged to Silas's daughter. It was modest, slightly frayed at the hem. I had washed the soot off my face, but I left the dark circles under my eyes. I looked tired. I looked beaten. "Here," Silas handed me an earpiece, tiny and flesh-colored. "Put this in. I'll be in the van outside monitoring the feed. If things go south, if they get violent, I'm 10 seconds away." "They won't get violent," I said, clutching the black binder. "Not in public. That's why we chose the glass room." I put the earpiece in and covered it with my hair. "Showtime," Silas said. I walked into the library. The atrium was vast and filled with light, a stark contrast to the darkness of my recent life. People were reading, studying, living their normal lives. They had no idea that a Greek tragedy was about to play out on the mezzanine level. I took the escalator up. I could see the conference room from below. It was a fishbowl, suspended in the air, walls made of floor-to-ceiling glass, and inside, they were waiting. Franklin was sitting at the head of the table, looking like a king on his throne. He was wearing a navy suit that probably cost more than my car. He was checking his watch, looking impatient. Elena sat to his right. She was wearing white, a calculated choice to make her look innocent, angelic. She was applying lipstick, using the reflection in her compact mirror. A third man was there, their lawyer, Mr. Sterling, a weasel of a man with slicked-back hair who had helped my father bury zoning violations for years. They looked comfortable. They looked secure. They looked like people who had gotten away with murder. I took a deep breath. I adjusted the binder in my arms. I forced my shoulders to slump, my head to bow. I walked toward the glass doors. I pushed the door open. The air conditioning in the room was cold. "You're late," Franklin said without looking up from his phone. "I'm sorry, Dad," I said softly. The bus was slow. Elena snapped her compact shut and turned to me. Her smile was dazzling, a predator showing its teeth. "Monica, darling," she said, gesturing to the empty chair at the opposite end of the table. "We were so worried you might get cold feet. You look terrible. Has anyone told you that you really need to take better care of yourself?" "I know," I said, placing the heavy black binder on the table with a dull thud. "I've had a hard week." "Well, it is about to get easier." "Mr." Sterling said, sliding a thin stack of papers toward me. "As discussed, this is the transfer of assets and the voluntary commitment form. It essentially states that you are acknowledging your mental health crisis and granting Franklin full stewardship over your finances and medical decisions. Once you sign this, the police investigation goes away. Your father has assurances." I looked at the papers. They were exactly what I expected. A death warrant for my freedom. I didn't sit down. I stood at the end of the table, my hand resting on my binder. "I read the papers you sent," I said, my voice quiet. "But I have some papers of my own," Franklin scoffed. "We don't have time for your diary entries. Monica, sign the documents so we can get you to the clinic." "The car is waiting. I just want to make sure we are all on the same page," I said, looking at Elena. "About the fire and the money." "The fire was an accident," Elena said, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Caused by your negligence. We are doing you a favor by covering it up." I smiled. It wasn't the weak, trembling smile I had practiced in the mirror. It was a cold, sharp, terrifying smile that reached my eyes and stayed there. I saw Elena flinch. She saw it. She saw the change. "Actually," I said, my voice dropping the tremble, becoming clear and strong, projecting to the hidden microphone in the center of the table. "I don't think it was negligence, and I don't think I'm the one who needs a lawyer." I opened the black binder. "Shall we begin?" I asked. Franklin stood up, his face turning red. "What is this? What are you doing?" "I'm doing what you taught me, Dad," I said, flipping to the first divider. "I'm taking control of the narrative." I looked at the glass walls. Below us, in the atrium, I could see the news crews Silas had tipped off starting to gather, their cameras pointing up at the fishbowl. "Smile, Elena," I said. "You're on camera." The air in the glass conference room was so cold it felt sterile, like an operating theater where a patient was about to be dissected. Franklin sat at the head of the mahogany table, his posture rigid and imperious, while Elena sat to his right, radiating a practiced, saintly glow in her white cashmere dress. Across from them sat Arthur Sterling, their personal attorney, a man whose sharp suit and slicked-back hair could not conceal the nervous energy in his tapping fingers. I stood at the opposite end of the table, clutching the black binder I had prepared. To them, I looked like a defeated child clutching a security blanket. To me, it felt like I was holding the launch codes to a nuclear weapon. "Sit down, Monica," Franklin commanded, gesturing to the empty leather chair. "Stop being dramatic, Mr. Sterling charges by the hour, and we have wasted enough time on your histrionics." I pulled the chair out slowly and sat. I placed the binder on the table but did not open it. I kept my hands folded in my lap, suppressing the urge to look at the hidden camera lens disguised as a speakerphone hub in the center of the table. I knew Silas was watching from the van outside. I knew the district attorney was watching from his office, and I knew that in the lobby below, the press was gathering, waiting for the scoop I had promised them. Mr. Sterling slid a thick document across the polished wood. It stopped perfectly in front of me. "This is the standard confession of liability and power of attorney agreement," Sterling said, his voice dry and devoid of emotion. "By signing this, you admit that the fire at the residency was caused by your own negligence regarding the misuse of electrical heating equipment. You also agree to transfer full executive control of your assets, including the trust fund and any insurance payouts, to Franklin Hargrave for the purpose of restitution and medical management." "Medical management?" I asked, my voice trembling just enough to sell the performance. "It is for your own good, darling," Elena cooed, reaching out to pat my hand. Her skin was cool, her touch light. "We just want to make sure you get the help you need in Vermont. You are clearly not well. The stress has broken you. Let us carry the burden." "It is a very generous offer," Franklin added, leaning back and tenting his fingers. "Most fathers would let you rot in a jail cell for arson. I am offering you a lifeline. I am offering you forgiveness." I looked down at the paper. The words swam before my eyes. Admission of guilt, mental incapacity, irrevocable transfer. "I need a pen," I whispered. Sterling produced a heavy gold-plated fountain pen from his pocket and uncapped it. He handed it to me. I took it. My hand shook. I brought the nib down to the signature line, hovering just millimeters above the paper. Franklin leaned forward, his eyes hungry. Elena held her breath. They were so close to the finish line. They were so close to the $2.5 million they needed to save their crumbling empire. I let the pen rest on the paper, making a tiny ink blot. Then I stopped. I looked up, locking eyes with my stepmother. "That is a beautiful watch." "Elena," I said softly. Elena blinked, confused by the sudden change in topic. "What?" "The watch," I repeated, my voice gaining a little more strength. "The Rolex date, just on your left wrist, the mother-of-pearl dial. It is exquisite." Elena's eyes darted to her wrist, then back to me. A flicker of panic crossed her face, but she smoothed it over instantly. "Oh, this? It is just an old thing I found in my jewelry box. I haven't worn it in years." "That is strange," I said, leaning forward, "because I have a photo of that exact watch on my insurance schedule. It belonged to my mother, my biological mother, and the last time I saw it. It was in the velvet box on my dresser in my apartment, the apartment that burned down on Tuesday." The room went deadly silent. Elena instinctively covered the watch with her right hand, pulling her sleeve down. "You are mistaken. This is mine. You are hallucinating again, Monica. This is exactly why you need treatment." "Am I?" I asked. "Because if I looked closely, would I find a small scratch on the bezel near the number 6? The scratch my mom made when she dropped it on her honeymoon in 1998? Or did you manage to buff that out when you stole it from my bedroom 2 hours before the fire started?" Franklin slammed his hand on the table, making the water glasses jump. "That is enough. I will not sit here and listen to you accuse my wife of theft." Sign the paper. Monica, or I swear to God I will have the police arrest you for slander. You want to talk about the police? Dad? I turned my gaze to him. Let's talk about the police. Let's talk about the timeline. I don't know what you are talking about, Franklin spat, his face flushing a deep, angry red. 3:15 in the morning, I said, enunciating every syllable. That was when I called you. That was when you told me not our problem and hung up. You sounded very sleepy, Dad. You sounded like you were in bed, warm and cozy. I was in bed, Franklin shouted. Then why does the GPS log from your Tesla Model S show that the vehicle was parked on West 4th Street, exactly 1 block from my apartment, from 3:12 to 3:20 in the morning? Franklin froze. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. The blood drained from his face, leaving it a patchy, sickly gray. The Tesla app records everything. Dad, I continued, my voice hard as steel now. Every trip, every stop. You weren't in bed. You were sitting in your car, watching my building burn. You were waiting to see if I came out. That is lie, Franklin stammered, looking at Sterling for help. She hacked my account. It is a fabrication. Mr. Sterling, I said, turning to the lawyer. I suggest you stop looking at your client and start looking at the screen behind you. I pulled a small remote from my pocket and pressed the button. I had synced it with the library's AV system 10 minutes before they arrived. The large projection screen on the glass wall flickered to life. The first image was the video from my peephole camera. It showed the timestamp, February 3rd, 1400 hours. It showed Elena, clear as day, walking down my hallway. She was wearing blue latex gloves. She was carrying a box. The box for the Vornado heater. Is that a fabrication, Dad? I asked. On screen. Elena unlocked my door and entered. The video cut to 30 minutes later. She exited. The heater box was gone. In her hand was a bulging duffel bag. Elena let out a strangled gasp. She pushed her chair back, scraping it loudly against the floor. I was just dropping off a gift. I was cleaning up for her. With latex gloves? I asked. And what was in the bag? Elena? My silver? My paintings? Or was it just the things you didn't want to burn when the timer went off? I clicked the remote again. The screen changed. This time, it displayed a scanned document, the receipt from the supply yard. Acetone, I read aloud. Ceramic heating core, industrial grade, purchased by a woman matching Elena's description at a shop that sells illegal construction materials. We have the witness. Elena, the clerk remembers you. He remembers you asking how long it would take for the element to reach critical temperature. Mr. Sterling stood up. He was pale, sweating profusely. He began shoving papers into his briefcase with frantic, jerky movements. Mr. Sterling, sit down. Franklin barked. No, Sterling said, his voice cracking. No, I will not sit down. You told me this was a negligence case. You told me she was mentally unstable. You did not tell me there was evidence of arson and premeditated murder. Murder? Franklin laughed, a desperate, manic sound. Nobody died. She is sitting right there. But you wanted me to, I said. I clicked the remote one last time. The screen went black, but the audio system kicked in. The sound was crystal clear, amplified by the conference room speakers. We needed the full package. We needed the life insurance payout. $2 million. Elena, that was the plan. If she had just stayed in bed if the smoke had gotten to her before she woke up. The voice filled the room. Franklin's voice, discussing the price of my life. I watched them. I watched the arrogant mask crumble off my father's face, revealing the terrified, small man beneath. I watched Elena shrink into herself, clutching her stolen watch, looking for an exit that didn't exist. $2 million, I said, standing up and leaning over the table. That is what I was worth to you. You didn't just abandon me, Dad. You tried to cash me out. You forged my signature on the trust fund this morning because the fire didn't kill me, and you needed the money so badly you couldn't wait. You ungrateful little witch, Franklin hissed. His eyes were wild. darting around the room. He realized he was trapped. He realized the glass walls were not protecting him. They were exposing him. He could see the flash of cameras from the floor below. He could see the people pointing. "I am not ungrateful," I said. "I am actually very thankful. You taught me a valuable lesson. You taught me that family isn't about blood. It's about who doesn't try to burn you alive to pay off a construction loan." I reached into the binder and pulled out a single sheet of paper. It wasn't evidence. It was a printout of the text message he had sent me years ago. The one he quoted on the phone. "You said it wasn't your problem," I said, my voice quiet but carrying the weight of a judge's gavel. "I once hoped you said, 'not our problem,' because you were heartless. But it turns out, you said it because you knew exactly where that fire came from." Something in Franklin snapped. The veneer of civilization, the years of pretending to be a respectable businessman, evaporated. He let out a roar of pure, animalistic rage. "You ruined everything!" he screamed. He lunged across the table. He was fast for a man of his age. Fueled by adrenaline and ruin, he knocked the water pitcher over, sending glass shattering across the floor. He reached for my throat. His fingers hooked like claws. "Mister!" Sterling shouted and backed away against the glass wall. Elena screamed. I didn't move. I didn't flinch. Because I knew I wasn't alone. Just as Franklin's hands were inches from my neck, the side door of the conference room burst open. It wasn't the police. Not yet. It was Silas Vance. He moved with the efficiency of a man who had spent 30 years taking down bad guys. He didn't shout. He didn't posture. He simply stepped into Franklin's path, grabbed his outstretched arm, and used the man's own momentum to spin him around. With a sickening crunch of impact, Silas slammed my father face first onto the mahogany table. "Federal agent," Silas barked, old habits dying hard. "Stay down. Do not move." Franklin struggled, thrashing like a fish on a hook, spitting curses. "Get off me. Do you know who I am? I will bury you." "Franklin Hargrave," Silas said, twisting Franklin's arm behind his back until he yelped. "You are nobody. You are a bankrupt arsonist who just attempted to assault a witness on a live federal broadcast." "Live?" Elena whispered, standing up, her face white as a sheet. I pointed to the speakerphone hub. "Smile, Elena. The district attorney is watching, and so is the 6 o'clock news." At that moment, the main glass doors slid open, 4 uniformed police officers marched in, followed by a man in a sharp suit who I recognized as District Attorney Miller. "Good morning," Miller said, looking at the scene with a grim satisfaction. "Mr. Sterling, I suggest you step away from your clients unless you want to be named as a co-conspirator in a RICO indictment." Sterling threw his hands up and practically ran to the corner of the room. "I had no knowledge of this. I was lied to. I represent them only in civil matters." The officers moved in. 2 of them hauled Franklin off the table. His nose was bleeding, staining his expensive shirt. He looked at me, his eyes filled with a hatred so pure it was almost impressive. "I made you," he spat, struggling against the handcuffs. "I paid for your school. I paid for your life. You owe me." "I don't owe you a thing," I said, picking up the gold pen he had given me to sign my death warrant. I capped it with a satisfying click and tossed it onto the table. "But I think the state of Illinois has a bill for you, something about 20 years to life." Another officer approached Elena. She tried to pull away, clutching her pearls. "Don't touch me. He did it. It was his idea. He forced me." "We have you on video buying the bomb, lady," the officer said, snapping the cuffs on her wrists. "Save it for the judge." As they dragged her past me, I reached out and gently tapped her wrist. "Be careful with the watch," I said. "It's evidence, and I'd like it back when you're done with it." Elena looked at me, her mouth opening and closing, stripped of her arrogance, stripped of her lies. She looked old. She looked pathetic. I turned to the glass wall. Below, in the atrium, hundreds of people were looking up. Camera flashes went off like fireworks. I saw the red tally light of a news camera pointed right at me. I didn't hide my face. I didn't look away. I stood tall, for the first time in my life. I wasn't Monica's disappointment. I wasn't Monica the victim. I was the architect of my own justice. Silas walked over to me, adjusting his jacket. He looked at the chaos, then at me. "You okay?" he asked. I looked at my parents being shoved into the elevator, their legacy in ruins, their freedom gone. "I'm homeless," I said. "I'm broke. I'm unemployed." I took a deep breath, and for the first time since the explosion, the air tasted sweet. "But I'm free," I said. "I'm finally free." The glass walls of the conference room, which my father had intended to be the display case for my humiliation, had transformed into the terrarium of his destruction. The heavy double doors swung open with a violence that made the glass rattle in its frame, and a dozen uniformed officers flooded the room. They moved with a synchronized, aggressive efficiency that stripped the last remnants of dignity from the Hargrave name. I watched, motionless, as the reality of the situation crashed down on Franklin and Elena. The live stream was still running. The red tally light on the camera hub in the center of the table was a steady, unblinking eye, broadcasting every second of their downfall to the world. I glanced at my phone, which was resting on the table next to the black binder. The internet moves faster than justice. The headlines were already shifting, mutating from the sob story my father had planted into something far more sensational. Breaking news: real estate tycoon arrested on live stream. Update: Franklin Hargrave, accused of plotting daughter's murder for insurance payout. Viral video: the moment "not our problem" became a confession, it was over. The narrative he had spent 40 years constructing, the image of the benevolent, self-made man, had evaporated in less than 10 minutes. "You have the right to remain silent," an officer shouted, wrenching Franklin's arms behind his back. "Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Franklin was not remaining silent. He was sputtering, his face a mask of purple rage and disbelief. "This is a mistake. Do you know who I am? I am a pillar of this community. I demand to speak to the mayor. I demand my phone." "You are not speaking to anyone but a lawyer, Mr. Hargrave," District Attorney Miller said. Stepping over the shattered glass of the water pitcher, he looked at the scene with cold professional satisfaction. "And considering your current attorney looks like he's about to faint, I suggest you find a new one." Sterling, the weasel lawyer, was pressed against the glass wall, his hands raised in surrender, desperately trying to distance himself from his clients. But the real show was Elena. As the officer clicked the handcuffs onto her wrists, right over the stolen Rolex she had foolishly worn to her own execution, she shattered. The Ice Queen melted, revealing the desperate, clawing survivor beneath. "It was him!" she shrieked, her voice shrill and piercing, echoing through the library atrium. She threw her body weight away from Franklin, looking at the police with wide, frantic eyes. "I didn't want to do it. He forced me. He said we were going to lose the house. He said he would kill me if I didn't help him." "Elena, shut your mouth," Franklin roared, struggling against the two officers holding him. "No, I will not shut up," Elena screamed back, turning on her husband with the ferocity of a cornered rat. "He is the one who planned it. He is the one who found the schematics for the heater. And it's not just this. Ask him about the North Side project. Ask him about the cement mixing. He cut the concrete with sand to save money. The foundations are cracking. He bribed the inspector." The room went silent for a heartbeat. Save for the hum of the air conditioning, even the police seemed stunned by the speed of the betrayal. I looked at Silas, who was standing by the door, his arms crossed. He gave me a barely perceptible nod. Elena was doing exactly what we knew she would do. She was trading Franklin's secrets for a chance at a lighter sentence. She was burying him to save herself. "Concrete fraud," Dia Miller said, pulling out a notepad. "That is interesting. We will add that to the list. Keep talking. Mrs. Hargrave, we are very good listeners." I have files, Elena sobbed as they dragged her toward the door. I kept copies of the bribe ledgers. They are in the cloud. I can give you everything. Franklin looked at her, and for the first time, I saw genuine fear in his eyes. He wasn't afraid of the police. He was afraid of the truth. He looked at me then. It wasn't a look of regret. It wasn't a plea for forgiveness. It was pure, unadulterated hatred. He looked at me as if I were the villain, as if my refusal to die quietly was the ultimate act of rebellion. I held his gaze. I didn't flinch. I didn't look away. I felt a strange, cold emptiness where my fear used to be. You are a disappointment, he spat at me as the officers shoved him forward. You were always weak. I am still standing. Dad, I said, my voice calm, cutting through the noise. And you are in handcuffs. Who is the weak one now? He lunged at me again, but the officers slammed him into the doorframe before dragging him out into the hallway. As the room cleared of the immediate threat, a young detective walked in. Holding a phone to his ear, he signaled to Miller. Sir, we have confirmation from the search team at the residence. Miller put the phone on speaker. Go ahead. Lieutenant, what did you find? Jackpot. The voice on the phone crackled. We opened the wall safe in the master bedroom. It is packed. We found a collection of antique silver flatware with the monogram MH. We found 3 oil paintings that matched the description of the victim's insurance rider, and we found a jewelry box containing approximately $50,000 worth of heirlooms. I closed my eyes and let out a long breath. They had kept it all. They were so arrogant, so sure that I was helpless, that they hadn't even bothered to sell the stolen goods yet. They had kept my mother's legacy as trophies in their bedroom. Photograph everything, Miller ordered. Bag it all. That is possession of stolen property and proof of premeditation. It proves they entered the apartment before the fire. We also found something else, the lieutenant added. We found a second heater element. Same brand, same modification. Looks like a prototype they were testing. That seals it, Silas said, stepping forward. That is conspiracy to commit murder, 1st degree. I walked over to the table and picked up the piece of paper I had received from the bank earlier that morning, the fax with the forged signature. Mr. Miller, I said, handing him the document, I think you should have this, too. Miller took the paper, scanning it quickly. His eyebrows shot up. This morning? He asked, looking at the timestamp. 9 a.m.? I said. While I was preparing to come here, they forged my signature to drain my grandmother's trust fund. They claimed I was mentally incapacitated. Miller shook his head, a look of disgust crossing his face. Wire fraud, identity theft, elder trust abuse, and since they tried to flee with the money by transferring it to a shell company, this guarantees no bail. They are flight risks. They are not going home tonight, Ms. Hargrave. They are not going home ever. Just then, a man in a sharp gray suit entered the room. He carried a briefcase and looked like a shark that had just smelled blood in the water. This was Alan Thorne, the civil litigator Silas had called in. He wasn't working for charity. He was working for a percentage, and he knew that while Vanguard Structures was crumbling, there were still assets to be seized. Ms. Hargrave, Thorne said, shaking my hand firmly, I have already filed the emergency injunction. Based on the arrest and the evidence of the forged trust transfer, a judge has just granted a temporary freezing order on all personal and business assets belonging to Franklin and Elena Hargrave. What does that mean? I asked. It means they can't pay their lawyers, Thorne smiled, and it was a terrifying thing. It means every dime they have, the house, the cars, the offshore accounts, is now locked down pending the outcome of your civil suit for damages. Emotional distress, and restitution. Vanguard Structures is effectively dead. The creditors are already filing liens. By the time the criminal trial is over, there won't be enough left of his empire to buy a pack of cigarettes. It was total, scorched earth victory. Thank you, I said. We should go, Silas said gently. The police need to process the scene, and there is a crowd downstairs waiting for you. I adjusted the strap of my purse. I looked around the glass room one last time. It was a mess. Chairs were overturned. Water was soaking into the carpet. It looked like a storm had passed through. "I am ready," I said. We walked out of the room and toward the escalators. The noise hit us before we even saw the lobby. It was a roar, a mix of shouting reporters, clicking shutters, and the murmurs of hundreds of onlookers. As I stepped onto the escalator, descending slowly into the atrium, the flashbulb started popping. It was blinding, a strobe light of white heat. "Monica! Monica! Over here! Did you know they were planning to kill you? How do you feel about your father?" "Ms. Hargrave!" I looked down. Through the sea of reporters, I saw the police escorting Franklin and Elena toward the exit. It was a slow, painful procession. Franklin was slumped over. His head hung low, trying to hide his face from the cameras he had courted just hours ago. He looked small. He looked old. The powerful titan of industry was gone, replaced by a criminal in wrinkled clothes. Elena was still sobbing, her makeup running in black streaks down her face, screaming at anyone who would listen that she was a victim. Nobody was listening. And then, just before they pushed him through the revolving doors and into the waiting squad car, Franklin looked back. He looked up at the escalator. Our eyes met one last time across the crowded atrium. I stood high above him, bathed in the light of the atrium, flanked by Silas Vance and the district attorney. He stood below, surrounded by police, shackled and broken. I didn't smile. I didn't wave. I simply stood there, bearing witness to his ruin. I remembered the snow. I remembered standing on the pavement in my bare feet, shivering, looking up at my burning home, feeling like the smallest person in the world while he slept in his warm bed. The world had flipped. The axis had tilted. The crowd parted for me as I reached the ground floor. A reporter thrust a microphone into my face. "Ms. Hargrave, Ms. Hargrave, do you have a statement? What do you have to say to your parents?" I stopped. I looked at the camera. I thought about the fire. I thought about the portfolio turning to ash. I thought about the "not our problem." "I have nothing to say to them," I said, my voice steady and clear. "I think the law will do all the talking from now on." "What will you do now?" another reporter shouted. "You lost everything." I looked at Silas. He offered me a small, proud smile. "No," I said, turning back to the camera. "I didn't lose everything. I lost the things that were weighing me down. Now I'm going to start building, and this time, I am going to build something that doesn't burn." I walked through the lobby doors and out into the cool, fresh air of the city. The police sirens were wailing, fading into the distance as they carted my nightmares away. For the first time in 28 years. I didn't have a home. I didn't have a job. I didn't have a family. But as I stood there, watching the back of the police van disappear around the corner, I realized something profound. I was the richest woman in Chicago, because I owned myself. It has been 6 months since the gavel came down in the Cook County Superior Court, and I can still hear the echo of it if I close my eyes in a quiet room. The sound was final. It was the sound of a heavy steel door slamming shut on the first 28 years of my life. The trial was a circus, just as Silas had predicted. My father tried every expensive legal maneuver in the book. He tried to claim entrapment. He tried to claim dementia. He even tried to claim that the recording was a deep fake generated by artificial intelligence. But the jury did not buy it. They looked at the video of Elena entering my apartment with blue latex gloves. They looked at the receipt for the industrial heating core. And most damning of all, they listened to the audio of a father putting a price tag on his daughter's life. 25 years. That was the sentence for Franklin Hargrave. At his age, it is a life sentence. He did not scream when the judge read it out. He just slumped in his chair, looking smaller than I had ever seen him, a man whose empire of debt and deceit had finally collapsed under its own weight. Elena received 15 years. She cried. Of course, she looked at me as the bailiffs led her away, her mascara running in dark streaks, and mouthed the word sorry. I do not know if she was sorry for what she did, or sorry that she got caught. I suppose it does not matter anymore. The silence they left behind was not empty. It was peaceful. With the legal battle over, the civil assets were liquidated, the mansion was sold to pay off the creditors, the Tesla was repossessed. But thanks to the aggressive work of my civil lawyer, Alan Thorne, a significant portion of the remaining assets were diverted to me as restitution for emotional distress. Attempted murder and the destruction of property. It was a substantial sum. It was blood money, in a way, but I chose to view it differently. It was back pay. It was compensation for every missed birthday, every cold remark, and every moment I spent trying to earn the love of people who were incapable of giving it. I did not keep the money in a bank account where I could stare at it. I put it to work. I resigned permanently from the corporate world. I was done with high-rise offices and boards of directors who cared more about image than integrity. I took a leap of faith and filed the incorporation papers for my own firm. Phoenix Scapes. It is a little on the nose, I admit. Naming a landscape architecture firm after a mythical bird that rises from ashes might seem dramatic to some, but to me, it is a daily reminder. Fire destroys, yes, but it also clears the ground. Some of the most beautiful forests in the world only germinate after a blaze. That is what I do now. I design gardens that focus on resilience, using native plants that can survive the harsh Chicago winters and come back stronger every spring. I needed a headquarters, but I could not bring myself to rent another glass box in the city. The trauma of the high-rise was still too fresh. I needed ground beneath my feet. I needed soil. So, I bought a house. It is in the suburbs, about 40 minutes from the city center. When I first saw it, the real estate agent apologized. She called it a handyman's special. It was an old Victorian farmhouse that had been neglected for a decade. The paint was peeling in long, gray strips, the porch sagged. The garden was a jungle of thistles and poison ivy, but it had good bones. It had a wraparound porch and big windows that looked out onto an acre of land, and most importantly, it was mine. No mortgage, no cosigners, no father's name on the deed. I have spent the last 3 months covered in sawdust and paint. I did a lot of the work myself. There is something incredibly healing about tearing down rot with your own hands and replacing it with fresh, clean wood. I sanded the floors until my arms ached. I painted the walls a warm, creamy yellow that catches the morning sun. I planted a willow tree in the backyard, exactly where I can see it from my kitchen window. I am not alone in this house. Lucky, the cat who survived the smoke and the snow with me, has officially claimed the property as his kingdom. He has gained 2 pounds and lost the skittishness that defined him in the old apartment. He spends his days chasing sunbeams across the new hardwood floors or sleeping on the railing of the porch, watching the birds with the arrogance of a creature who knows he is safe. And I have visitors. Every Sunday morning, a battered sedan pulls into my driveway. Silas Vance does not look like a federal agent or a fire inspector when he comes over. He wears flannel shirts and brings a box of pastries from a bakery in the city. We sit on the porch and drink coffee. He has appointed himself the unofficial guardian of my safety. The first thing he did when I moved in was personally install a commercial-grade fire suppression system. "Overkill?" he had asked, holding up a smoke detector that looked like it belonged on a spaceship. "Maybe, but I'm not taking chances with you, kid." Silas has become the father figure I never had. He does not try to control me. He does not ask for anything. He just checks the locks, pats the cat, tells me bad jokes about his days in the arson unit, and reminds me that I am doing a good job. He is proof that family is not about DNA. It is about who shows up. Last Saturday, I hosted my first real party. It wasn't a gala. There were no diamonds, no politicians, and no pretenses. It was a housewarming barbecue. I drove into the city to pick up Mrs. Henderson. She is the neighbor who gave me her coat on the worst night of my life. When she saw me, she hugged me so hard I thought my ribs would crack. "Look at you," she said, walking through my garden, her poodle trotting beside her. "You look like a different person. Monica, you have color in your cheeks." "I feel like a different person," I told her. We sat in the backyard as the sun went down. eating burgers and drinking lemonade. Silas was manning the grill. Lucky was hunting fireflies in the tall grass. Mrs. Henderson was telling stories about her grandchildren. It was simple, it was ordinary, and it was the most beautiful evening of my life. Tonight, however, I am alone. It is a cool evening for August, a hint of autumn already in the air. I have just finished unpacking the last box from storage. I found something at the bottom of a file folder. It is an old piece of paper, wrinkled and yellowed. It is a loan agreement my father made me sign when I was 22. For the down payment on my first car. He had kept it over my head for years, even after I had paid him back, claiming there was interest I still owed. It was his favorite tool to make me feel indebted, to make me feel small. I walked over to the fireplace in the living room. It is a wood-burning hearth, deep and stone-lined. Silas checked the flue 3 times to make sure it was safe. I struck a match. The sound was sharp in the quiet room. For a long time, I was afraid of fire. I flinched when a stove ignited. I couldn't be around candles, but I have learned that fire is not inherently evil. It is a tool. In the wrong hands, it destroys. In the right hands, it warms. I held the flame to the corner of the paper. I watched the orange tongue of fire lick at the edges. I watched the ink of my father's signature curl and blacken. I watched the numbers, the debt, the control, the obligation, turn into smoke. I dropped the burning paper into the grate and watched it until it was nothing but a pile of delicate gray ash. "Goodbye, Franklin," I whispered. The ash settled. I would scoop it out tomorrow and mix it into the soil of my rose garden. It would feed the roots. It would help something beautiful grow. The silence was broken by the ringing of my phone on the coffee table. I walked over and looked at the screen. It was a restricted number. In the past, my heart would have hammered against my ribs. I would have answered, terrified that it was a lawyer, or a creditor, or Franklin calling from a prison payphone to scream at me one last time. But tonight, my pulse did not quicken. I looked at the phone with a sense of detached amusement. I did not pick up. I reached out and pressed the button to silence the ringer. I turned back to the window. Outside, the moon was rising over my garden, illuminating the young willow tree and the rows of flowers I had planted with my own hands. I was safe. I was whole. And for the first time, the future did not look like a dark hallway filled with smoke. It looked like an open field, waiting for me to design it. Voiceover. They say blood is thicker than water, as if biology is a binding contract you can never break. But I learned the hard way that family are the people who run into the burning building to pull you out. Not the ones who light the match and stand outside watching you burn. I used to be afraid of the wreckage they left behind. I used to think my life ended in that pile of soot. But I was wrong. Ash is not the end. Ash is the best fertilizer for a new garden. And my garden? It is just beginning to bloom. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. So please leave a comment down below and share your thoughts on Monica's journey. If you enjoyed this story, please make sure to subscribe to the Sunday Drama Stories channel, like this video, and hit that hype button to help this story get heard by more people.